I work security at a museum in Prague. Last month I watched an American tourist argue with our ticket desk for 15 straight minutes. She kept insisting we accept dollars because the euro is basically the same thing anyway. And when my colleague explained, we use Czech crowns. She pulled out her phone to show him a Wikipedia article about how Eastern Europe uses the euro. The article was about the Eurozone. We're not in it. She left to find an ATM, but returned an hour later, still trying to pay in dollars, asking if we'd figured out the conversion rate. Yet, that interaction taught me Americans don't just misunderstand other countries, they fundamentally can't process the idea that their assumptions might be wrong. My cousin drives a tour bus in Dubai, and he told me an American couple spent their entire city tour asking where the camels were, genuinely baffled that Dubai had skyscrapers. When he explained it's one of the world's most modern cities, the husband said, "Yeah, but where do you keep the real Dubai?" Like there was some authentic desert village hidden behind the Burj Khalifa. The wife asked if their hotel had regular toilets or just holes in the ground. While standing in front of the world's tallest building, I manage a hostel in Reykjavik, and an American backpacker checked in last summer demanding to know why we didn't have air conditioning. I explained Iceland rarely gets hot enough to need it, and she responded with a 10-minute lecture about how every building needs AC by law because of international safety standards she'd apparently invented. She claimed her aunt worked for the UN and confirmed this regulation. When I suggested she might be thinking of heating systems, she said, "No, I'm talking about air conditioning. You know, for cooling?" She genuinely believed I didn't understand what a C was. She spent her entire stay wearing tank tops and complaining about the humidity. Despite Reykjavik being one of the driest cities in Europe, these moments happen constantly, and they follow the same pattern. An American encounters something unfamiliar, decides it must be wrong, then constructs an elaborate explanation for why their confusion is actually everyone else's fault. My brother works at a train station in Osaka, and he watched an American family board a local commuter train with massive suitcases. He's confused why there was no luggage compartment. When he explained they'd boarded the wrong type of train, the father insisted, "All trains have luggage areas. It's a safety requirement." He claimed his neighbor was a railway engineer who'd confirmed this. And when my brother suggested they take the airport express instead, the father said they'd already paid for this train by tapping their IC cards at the gate. They rode 40 minutes in the wrong direction, blocking the aisle with their bags, before finally accepting they'd made a mistake. I'm a manager at a public bath in Budapest. And last winter, an American tourist walked straight into the thermal pools wearing his swim trunks and flip-flops from outside. Our attendant stopped him at the entrance, gesturing toward the shower area, and the guy responded, "I showered this morning at my hotel. I'm good." My attendant explained showering before entering is mandatory. It's posted in 6 languages. But the American shook his head and said, "That's a hygiene theater thing. The chlorine kills everything anyway." He pulled out his phone to show us a CDC article about pool sanitation, completely missing that these are natural thermal baths, not chlorinated pools. He argued that American health standards are stricter than European ones, so if I'm clean enough for us pools, I'm definitely clean enough here. He stood there for 20 minutes, dripping pool water from his unwashed body, citing supposed medical studies, before finally agreeing to rinse off. He spent 30 seconds under the water with his trunk still on, then walked back out, declaring, "See. Same result? Half the time?" My sister works the front desk at a hot spring resort in Hakone, and an American guest argued with her about the shoe policy for an entire afternoon. She'd walked into the traditional tatami room wearing her sneakers. And when my sister politely asked her to remove them, she said, "I paid for this room. I'll wear what I want." My sister explained that shoes damage the tatami mats, and it's standard practice throughout Japan. But the guest pulled up booking confirmations on her phone, scrolling through amenities lists saying, "It doesn't mention a shoe rule anywhere," which means it's optional. She claimed that in America. Hotels legally have to disclose all rules in the booking terms. And since this wasn't listed, it couldn't be enforced. She referenced something she called international hospitality law and suggested we were discriminating against Americans specifically. She wore her shoes inside for the next 2 days, leaving dirt tracks across the mats. and submitted a complaint that we'd harassed her about footwear choices. I teach English at a school in Amman, and an American volunteer lasted exactly 3 days before the principal asked him to leave. He'd arrived full of enthusiasm, but during his first class, he greeted our female students with handshakes and hugs, completely ignoring the cultural briefing we'd sent him. When our coordinator pulled him aside to explain the boundaries, he responded. Physical greetings build Rapparit's basic teaching methodology. He showed her his teaching certificate from some American program, pointing to a section about culturally responsive pedagogy, which he interpreted to mean his methods should work everywhere. He insisted that education transcends cultural barriers, and that adjusting his approach would be lowering standards. The final incident came when he tried to high-five the principal during a staff meeting and got genuinely offended when she stepped back. He wrote a blog post about how Jordan was stuck in the past educationally and needed to modernize their teaching environments. I work at a municipal office in Oslo, and an American expat came in last month demanding to speak to someone about our queuing system. She'd been living here for 2 weeks and couldn't understand why Norwegians don't form visible lines at bus stops. She'd created a PowerPoint presentation, actually brought her laptop to our office showing photos of American bus queues, and argued that Norway needed to implement proper line protocols for public safety. When I explained that Norwegians simply remember who arrived before them and board accordingly, she said that's an honor system, which only works in small populations. Oslo's a major city. Cited crowd management studies from American universities and suggested our informal system would cause chaos during emergencies. Wanted to submit a formal proposal to the city council for mandatory queue markers at every bus stop and seemed genuinely shocked when I told her our system works fine. My uncle manages a cafe in Melbourne, and an American regular spent 2 months trying to explain why we were doing coffee wrong. Every single morning, he'd order a long black and then lecture whoever was at the counter about how we should call it an Americano for international consistency. Brought in a laminated chart one day, showing coffee terminology from different countries, with Americano circled in red, arguing it was the globally recognized standard. When my uncle explained that Australian coffee culture developed differently and we have our own terms, the guy responded, "But that confuses tourists. You're hurting your own business by using local names." He claimed he'd worked in marketing and that standardization increases customer satisfaction. He actually suggested we rebrand our entire menu to match American coffee shop terminology, complete with sizing names like tall and grande. His reasoning was that Starbucks had already won the global coffee war, so we should just accept defeat and adapt. A receptionist at a doctor's office in Stockholm and an American patient argued about our appointment system for the better part of an hour. She'd booked a time slot for 3 weeks out and arrived expecting to be seen immediately, confused by the whole concept of scheduled healthcare. When I explained she needed to come back on her appointment date, she said, "But I'm here now. You have doctors here now. Why would I leave and come back?" I walked her through how appointment systems worked, and she responded, "In America, we have urgent care. You just walk in." Told her we have emergency services for urgent issues, but routine appointments require scheduling. Then she shook her head, saying, "That's rationed healthcare." This is exactly what they warned us about. She demanded to see the manager, insisting there was no way Sweden's system worked like this, and that I must be personally blocking her from seeing a doctor. My dad owns a restaurant in Lyon, and an American couple derailed service for an entire evening over the bread basket. They'd grabbed the bread when they sat down before ordering, and seemed confused when I brought the menus. When I returned to take their order, they complained the bread was cold, and asked for it to be warmed up. I explained it's served at room temperature as part of the meal, and the husband said, "Room temperature means hot. That's what room temperature means in restaurants." He claimed bread is always served warm because cold bread is a health code violation. Something about bacteria growth he'd apparently learned in a food safety class years ago. When I brought fresh bread from the same basket to prove it wasn't cold, he insisted the kitchen must have cooled it deliberately and asked to speak to my dad. My dad came out, confirmed we serve bread at room temperature, and the husband spent 20 minutes explaining American restaurant standards and how temperature control is the foundation of food service. I work at a street food stall in Bangkok, and an American tourist caused a scene last month when he tried to modify our pad thai. He wanted it without fish sauce, but keep it authentic, which is like asking for marinara without tomatoes. When I told him fish sauce is essential to the dish, he said, "Just use soy sauce instead, it's the same thing, just a different brand." I explained they're completely different ingredients with different flavors, and he responded, "Sauce is sauce. You're overthinking this." He pulled out his phone to show me recipes from American food blogs that claimed fish sauce and soy sauce were interchangeable, then got frustrated when I didn't immediately agree to swap them. He told me about a Thai restaurant in his hometown that does it right and makes pad Thai without fish sauce, so clearly it was possible. He ordered it anyway, complained it tasted too fishy, and left a review saying we refuse to accommodate dietary preferences. I'm a waiter at a trattoria in Naples, and an American family tested my patience last summer when they tried to order dinner at 4 p.m. When I explained we don't open for dinner service until 7 p.m., the father said, "But you're open now. We can see people inside." I told him those were staff preparing for the evening, and he responded, "So make us something. We're hungry now." Explained Italian dining culture operates on different schedules, and he said, "We're paying customers. Customer service means serving customers when they want service." He referenced something about business hours being legally required to mean any time the business is open, and claimed that in America, restaurants can't turn away customers during operating hours. I suggested several cafes that serve food all afternoon, and he accused me of gatekeeping Italian food and insisted we were losing business by refusing to adapt to tourist schedules. They came back at 7 p.m., got a table, and spent the entire meal explaining how American restaurants understood customer needs better. My cousin manages a pub in Dublin, and an American expat has spent 6 months trying to implement a tipping system that doesn't exist here. Every time she comes in, she leaves cash on the table and makes a big show of it, often announcing her tip percentage out loud. When my cousin politely explained that tips aren't expected in Irish pubs, she said, "But servers rely on tips. That's how the service industry works." My cousin walked her through how Irish servers earn full wages, and she responded, "That's socialism. You're telling me nobody tips here?" She insisted that not tipping was morally wrong, regardless of wage structure, and claimed she was supporting workers by maintaining American standards. She actually started asking other customers if they tipped, trying to start a tipping culture single-handedly, and seemed genuinely offended when people said they didn't. He's written multiple Google reviews praising the pub, but criticizing Irish people for not understanding service industry economics. I work at a cafe in Copenhagen, and an American customer argued about our coffee refill policy every single morning for 2 weeks. She'd order a cappuccino, drink it, then bring her empty cup to the counter expecting a free refill. When I explained refills aren't standard practice here, she said, "Coffee refills are free everywhere. That's international coffee shop policy." I told her she was thinking of American diners, and she pulled up photos on her phone of American coffee shops with free refill signs. Asking why we didn't have similar signage, she claimed the absence of a no refills sign meant refills were implied and that she'd checked European consumer protection laws that supposedly guaranteed free refills. She wanted to speak to the owner about implementing an American-style refill system, arguing it would increase customer loyalty. She calculated that we were losing money by not offering refills because customers would stay longer and order food. When I pointed out our business model doesn't rely on unlimited coffee, she said we were leaving money on the table and didn't understand basic cafe economics. I'm the owner of a noodle shop in Hanoi, and an American tourist got upset when I didn't bring him a fork. He'd ordered pho, and when I brought chopsticks and a soup spoon, he waved them away and said, "Just a regular fork." "Please," I explained, "we don't stock forks because Vietnamese food is traditionally eaten with chopsticks and spoons." And he responded, "Every restaurant has forks. Check in the back," assured him. We genuinely don't have any. And he said, "That's a hygiene issue. What if someone has a disability and can't use chopsticks?" He claimed restaurants are legally required to provide alternative utensils for accessibility reasons and suggested I was discriminating against him specifically. He ate his pho with his hands, scooping noodles directly to his mouth, then complained that Vietnamese food was designed poorly for Western diners. I sell tickets at a train station in Zurich, and an American tourist spent 40 minutes arguing about our platform system last summer. He'd bought a ticket to Geneva but couldn't understand why there were multiple platforms and why his train wasn't at platform 1. When I explained that, different trains depart from different platforms and he needed to check the departure board, he said, "That's inefficient. All trains to the same city should leave from the same platform." He pulled up an article about optimal transit design on his phone and insisted Swiss railways were overcomplicating things. When I showed him the departure board with his train's platform number, he said, "But what if I miss the announcement? American stations make sure every train stops at every platform so passengers don't get confused." I explained that would be physically impossible given our station's size and frequency, and he responded, "Then you need a bigger station. This is a design flaw." He nearly missed his train because he refused to go to the assigned platform, convinced there must be a main platform where all Geneva trains departed from. My brother drives a bus in Singapore, and an American passenger interrogated him about our payment system for the entire route. She'd tapped her card when boarding, but couldn't understand why she also needed to tap when exiting. When my brother explained the fare is calculated based on distance traveled, she said, "That's double charging. You can't make people pay twice." She claimed she'd studied transportation policy and that distance-based faring was illegal in developed countries because it discriminates against people who live farther away. My brother explained Singapore's system has been working this way for decades, and she responded, "Just because something's traditional doesn't make it right." This would never pass in America. She wanted to file a complaint with some transportation authority she'd invented, convinced Singapore was violating international transit regulations. She tried to explain to other passengers that they were being scammed and should refuse to tap out, causing several people to miss their stops while she blocked the exit giving her speech. I'm a tour guide in Marrakesh, and an American couple spent our entire walking tour confused about the Medina's layout. They kept asking where the street signs were. And when I explained that Medina's streets don't have official names, locals navigate by landmarks, the husband said. That's illegal. Every street has to have a name for emergency services. Insisted there must be hidden street signs that locals kept secret from tourists and referenced some international urban planning treaty he claimed required name streets globally. When I showed them how residents give directions using shops and mosques as reference points, so I've said, "But what's your actual address? How does mail work?" I explained our address system uses neighborhood names and building descriptions. She responded, "That's not a real address. You can't have a functioning city without numbered addresses." I spent the rest of the tour trying to create their own numbering system for the streets we walked, taking photos of buildings with numbers they'd assigned them. Convinced they were solving a major civic problem, I work at a metro station in Seoul, and an American exchange student couldn't grasp why our announcements are in Korean first. She'd been living here for a month and kept asking when the English announcements would come on, not realizing she'd already missed them because they'd come second. When I explained the sequence, she said, "But English is the international language. It should come first for clarity." She claimed international metro systems always prioritize English because it's the universal standard, suggested Seoul was behind other global cities. She wanted to submit a petition to the city to reverse the announcement order, genuinely believing this was a change that needed to happen. She'd researched nothing about living in Korea before arriving and expected the entire country to operate in English because that's what international cities do. My dad works at a tourist information center in Iceland, and an American visitor couldn't comprehend Iceland's geography last winter. She wanted to rent a car and drive to Norway for the day. And when my dad explained Norway is in a completely different country across the ocean, she said, "But I saw on Google Maps it doesn't look that far." She'd zoomed out on the map until Iceland and Norway appeared close together and hadn't registered that she was looking at thousands of kilometers.